Hello, everyone. Good morning from the Netherlands. Good afternoon if you are in Vietnam. Welcome to this special edition of our COVID-19 briefing, our DBAV Business Town Hall. A special welcome to the Ambassador of Vietnam, Mr. Pham Viet An. We are very happy that you are here as well, together with DBAV members, to listen. And hello, sir, there you are. Yeah, fantastic. Good to see you. We're very happy to have you engaging with our DBAV members and listen to the panel. I have three guests for you. The first guest is Elsbeth Akkerman. She is Ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Hello, Elsbeth. She is accompanied. Hello. She's accompanied by Christoph Prommersberger, Prommersberger in Dutch, Deputy Head of Mission up in Hanoi of the Dutch Embassy. And my other guest is Alexander Koch. He is Managing Director at Heineken Vietnam and in his free time, DBAV Chairman. Welcome, Alex. My name is Guido van Rooij. I am the host today. I'm the Executive Director of the DBAV. And it's great to see so many DBAV members join in and join hands to have a successful meeting together. A few rules up front. Well, you probably know what they are. It's a webinar where we hope to absolutely engage with you. So we hope to do that with you through chat. And if you want to actually say something during the Q&A session, you can raise your hand and open the mic, but please only on my signal to make sure that we have a nice and structured meeting. Recording and some documents, for example, the presentation that we will do in a minute, will be sent to your email in the post-read. So again, we are looking for a highly engaging session. Do not hold back, ask your questions, comment in chat, and let's help each other try to find new insights during this unprecedented times. Team, can I go to the next slide, please? The schedule of the webinar. Thanks. So first off, we have held digital roundtable sessions on challenges that Dutch enterprise in Vietnam are facing during this time. And together with Christoph Prommersberger, the Deputy Head of Mission at the Netherlands Embassy, I have hosted 4 roundtables over the past week, starting on Wednesday with 2, then on Thursday 1, and Monday was the last one, where about 30 DBAV Dutch enterprise members have joined in to speak about the challenges that they faced. And together with Christoph at the Embassy, we have clustered those problems and we would like to present those to you. After that's done, we will do an introduction of the panel. Elsbeth Akkerman will speak about what the embassy is doing, what the daily tasks and obligations of the embassy are. And Alexander will elaborate from his role as Managing Director at Heineken Vietnam on the issues that Heineken is facing, but also on what the DBAV is doing and is going to do. Then it's time for some interaction through a poll program, a poll about the issues due to COVID-19 in Vietnam. We have, as I mentioned, clustered the issues. It is this is a good moment to make a choice of all the issues that you are mostly facing, and using the outcome, we will further coordinate and facilitate the discussion. And around 3:40, we have named it the future for Dutch businesses in Vietnam, but we can see it as a question and answer, a Q&A together with Elsbeth and Alex, and trying to find the way forward together under a Dutch flag. Fantastic. So that is the program. Without further ado, Christoph, are you ready to hold the presentation with me?
Yes, I am, Guido. And good morning and good afternoon, everyone.
Great. So again, what we have done is we have discussed the issues that companies were facing. We have shared best practices together, and we did that by using Chatham House rules, which means that we can use the results, be it in an anonymized manner. And it was an invitation only table. And I'm very glad to also have the Vietnamese ambassador and of course the Dutch ambassador join us so that they can all take note of the things that we are experiencing. Christophe, I think the first slide will be, this is, the first slide. You can skip the next slide, Tien. I think we all know what the situation is like in Vietnam. So let's go to issue number 1, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Guido. And let me start by thanking all the participants in the roundtable sessions that we organized for joining. Because for both the DBAV and the embassy, it is very important to learn firsthand what your concerns are at the moment. Because indeed, like Guido was saying, the current situation is unprecedented. And the situation in Vietnam today looks so much different from a year ago, and it brings completely new challenges for the Dutch businesses in Vietnam. And the DBAV and the embassy jointly would like to get a clear picture of what those issues are, so that we are in the right position to support Dutch businesses in Vietnam with those issues. Looking at the concerns that were raised by the companies that we had roundtables with in the past week, I think the main issue was the lack of clarity and predictability in pandemic communications. What does that mean? It means basically that companies have larger or smaller operations, and they would like to support the efforts of the government in fighting the pandemic. But that is sometimes very challenging because it is not always clear what the measures are and what the expectations towards the companies are. And due to the lack of clear instructions, especially sometimes at the provincial and the local level, and the large deviation in the implementation of laws and regulations, that causes problems for companies. They don't know how to prepare in their business operations for assisting the government in their fight against the pandemic, and at the same time also sustaining their business and supporting their staff and the families of their staff. So many companies highlighted to us that they would be in need of clear instructions on the paperwork, and that those instructions will be implemented in a consistent way. And it would be very helpful if there are any changes in the regulations and in the policies, if they would be announced in such an early stage that businesses can prepare. So to give them at least a week of preparation time to make sure that they will be able to comply with the new rules and at the same time to sustain their business. Guido, anything to add?
I think that's a very proper summary of what we heard. Yeah, this was the main concern. If I were to pick one, this was the one that we heard back. So it's I think it's right that we start with the lack of predictability and also the total lack of perspective that there seems to be sometimes. It's difficult to make a plan in this time.
Yeah, that's it, Guido, because that's maybe even that's the overarching issue, I would say, that if there's no predictability, you see that the perspective of what the future could look like is eroding. And for every business, of course, it is important to also be able to do midterm and longer term planning. And because of the lack of predictability, that is slowly disappearing, that possibility.
Yeah. Next slide, Tien. Yeah, a summary of what we're seeing here from my side would be the logistical and operational challenges. So Christophe and me, we co-hosted this roundtable, and what we've heard is that the 3 on-site policy, and it's not something we only have heard during this roundtable, but it's a common known fact that there are massive challenges of the 3 on-site policies and regimes. In some cases, more than 4 or even 5 weeks already, the staff of the Dutch companies have to stay continuously on site. Of course, they will need to return to home at some point. And there is increasing demotivation due to being away from home for such a long time, despite the things that Dutch businesses are doing to compensate the staff for them. Besides that, there are very high costs involved with keeping operations going under such a policy, and that is becoming more and more problematic. What we're also hearing is that some businesses have chosen to close instead of to continue under the 3OS rules, which has huge consequences for companies that are active in the supply chain of those companies. So those systems are very severely disrupted. The last subpoint is about switching to suppliers, as supply chains are switching to other countries such as India and China, because the supply chains are so heavily disrupted. And this is, of course, a potential long-term risk for Vietnam, that foreign investors are now walking away, seeking their production opportunities in other countries than Vietnam. Christoph.
Yes, thank you, Guido. And I think indeed what we see here is a combination of business issues, but also of mental health issues with staff. There was one company that mentioned the example of a staff member that had been staying on site for 4 weeks already and was supposed to stay for another 2 weeks, while both his wife and his daughter were currently in hospital with COVID. But there was no opportunity for him to leave and to support his family. And of course, that caused a lot of stress, not only to this person, but also to his colleagues and to the company, who is trying to do everything to support the family, of course, in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are very difficult situations that need to end as soon as possible. Tim, can we go to the next slide, please?
Yes, and the next slide is also related to logistical issues, but not so much related to the free on-site policy, but more related to hindrances at the provincial borders. So what we see is that there are many checkpoints at provincial borders, and the rules and regulations on what is necessary to pass those checkpoints are not always clear, and are sometimes implemented in different ways. So that way, supply chains of companies get seriously delayed and sometimes disrupted. And it goes both ways. So it means that companies have problems to bring essential parts which they need for their production to their production site, but it also means that some companies have problems bringing their end product to the port to export those end products to Europe or to other international markets. And some companies have hired logistical operators, and they have noticed that those operators that are, of course, highly specialized and have real-time information on what is happening at every checkpoint are able to still bring their products to the port, but at a very high price. And in combination with the very high container price at the moment, which is at the moment about 10 times as high as a year ago, that leads to very high costs for companies that are exporting to the international market. Which is, of course, in the long term and in the medium term, a concern for their business sustainability. Guido.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add to that, for example, one of the participants said that the things that are implemented on a local level can be interpreted completely differently on a world level, which really hampers the continuity of the business, especially in the Lat region, moving south to Ho Chi Minh City, but also moving towards the ports. It's very difficult to get through the checkpoints. There seems to be no uniformity in the application of the rules, and it's very difficult to sell your products because it's so difficult to simply get them to the destination. So when the outline process is not implemented consistently at the local levels, then you can predict beforehand that large problems at the borders will occur.
Indeed, and what you also see, Guido, is that some provinces go even a step further. So there was one province where truck drivers had to change to another truck in order to continue their journey. Luckily, that has been rectified thanks to the Minister of Transport. But it is a symptom of where these logistical disruptions can really cause big problems.
Correct, absolutely. Let's move on to the next issue. And by the way, if you are writing along actively, don't bother, because we will send you a one-pager or two-pager of all these points after the webinar. And that will be the issue report that we will also use at the DBAV to address those issues where we can, for example, at the Eurocham or at the provincial or even national levels. And surely at the embassy, they will be doing the same. This is a relatively short slide. Business development problems. Of course, due to the work from home situation, we see that a lot of businesses are having difficulty to keep their sales up. Many sales representatives have been unable to hold physical meetings, and that's leading to lack of new business, empty sales pipelines, and difficulty in forecasting the actual potential of the markets. So for the startup, scale-up schemes, but for the startup and scale-up systems and the companies active there, it's difficult to predict the future because they can't run their sales properly.
Yeah, Guido, what I found interesting was that many of those sales reps that joined in our roundtables, they were calling in from the Netherlands, because what they were saying basically was that as long as they couldn't have any physical meetings, it didn't make a lot of sense to stay in Ho Chi Minh in particular, or in Hanoi in a lockdown situation. But of course, what some of them also highlighted was that the longer this situation would continue, the less likely it would be that at some point they would return.
Yeah.
Which is a serious concern, of course, for the longer term business sustainability. Yeah.
So the long-term business sustainability, you can actually divide the problems between short-term, which are difficult problems to deal with, but will go away once the situation improves. But the long-term problems, such as the disrupted supply chains, investors that are walking out to other or neighboring countries, these are the most difficult problems for the long term, and they need continuous addressing to make sure that the impact is minimized.
Indeed, and the same goes for our next issue, that is difficulties with expat immigration. Of course, this has been an issue that has been very high on the agenda from the start of this pandemic. But I think also the longer it endures, the more severe it becomes. Because there was, for instance, one general manager of a Dutch company participating in a roundtable, and he had been in charge of the company already for, I think, 8 or 10 months, and he still had not been in Vietnam. And you can survive for some time in that mode, but not forever, of course. And there has been a time when bringing in expert was relatively easy, even if it required a lot of paperwork. But at the moment, it is really very, very difficult. And that means that it has a real effect on business continuity. And more specifically, I think we see problems in rural areas where, for instance, there are no appropriate quarantine hotels. So then these people would have to quarantine in Ho Chi Minh City or in Hanoi. And that comes with extra approval time. And also here we see different interpretations on local levels. So where luckily now the 7+7 quarantine rule applies for people who are fully vaccinated, still some provinces or cities apply 14+14, which is a serious problem for some businesses. We spoke with one large Dutch company who is in the process of bringing in 45 representatives of one of their largest clients. And if those representatives cannot enter the country, they basically cannot sell their end product. And the 14+14 rule is a serious problem for their business and for this particular situation. So the embassy and the DBAV both try to assist them in connecting with the local authorities. But I highlight this issue just as an illustration of the kind of problems it is causing.
Yeah, Christophe, and to tackle one of the questions is coming from Hai Phong, from Daniel. Daniel's general manager of Alewijnse Vietnam, one of the companies specialized in the maritime industry. He says, hello everyone, question about quarantine time. Is it 7 days quarantine followed by 7 days isolation at home? Is that applicable everywhere in Vietnam, or are there differences between zones and cities? Well, Daniel, that is exactly the point that Christophe was making just now. And I think the instructions on a national level have been clear enough. But we see that on the way that the message, let's say, comes down into the provincial levels and even the local levels is interpreted differently. I know of people that are in Ho Chi Minh that have done 7+7, the way you described. And still, I've also learned that there are still cities or provinces more in the rural areas that have the 14+14. And as to your area of Hai Phong, I would have to look that up. And I'm happy to do that after the webinar.
Oh, well, I see that Joris from Hai Phong is informing us through the chat that Hai Phong is 14+7 currently. But indeed, that is a deviation from the 7+7 that is currently being applied in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. And that is a problem to Dutch companies in Hai Phong.
Yeah, it's difficult to understand how such a thing develops over the time, because the letter from the MOH has been clear enough at the start. Thanks, Joris, for letting us know. I think you are learning the hard way. You are probably doing that procedure right now. So good luck if you're in quarantine right now. Going to the next slide, and I've actually, there's a follow-up question from Tiemen that I would like to handle, and then the question from Koch, if that's okay, Koch, we go and do that at the Q&A. Tiemen says, would an international vaccine certificate issued by the GGD, the GGD, be sufficient for proof upon entry? Christophe, do you?
Yes, well, not upon entry, because you still require a approval procedure prior to getting on your flight. But indeed, it should qualify for the 7+7 regime. So what you need is this international a print of the international vaccination certification from RIVM in the Netherlands. And that should be sufficient to qualify for the 7+7 regime. But as mentioned, it is being implemented in different ways in different cities or provinces. Like just mentioned in Hai Phong, they still apply 14+7, whereas in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, it's now 7+7.
Yeah, and specifically to this point, and also to other points that where there is deviation from the ruling as it has been originally stated. It's very important for the embassy and also for us at the DBAV and Eurocham to take note of this. So please do involve us in problems or issues that you're facing in those kinds of regards, because we can help to point out the correct rulings to the authorities.
Indeed, we will take this on board in our messaging to the authorities, and also in particular situations, we can support individual companies.
Yeah. Last bit is the partner and family unhappiness, and I will just go through that. I think we have that in all of our personal lives. It's not only the partner unhappiness, it's usually also yourself. You're probably yourself unhappy with working at home. But then there's the other things, extended school closures, causing serious learning delays, and in some cases mental issues mental health issues for children. Homeschooling does put a high pressure on family life. and partner and family unhappiness. And most companies that have a lot of expats with them know that is usually the #1 reason for an expat to end their assignment early. And the same thing actually is it's actually driven by the current circumstances. So it can cause expat families to move out earlier than expected.
Indeed, Guido, that is what I see in my personal surroundings as well, and with 3 teenagers locked in and doing homeschooling. I know it from personal experience that it can be tough, and it's not a situation that you would like to continue for 6 to 12 months more.
Yeah. Then Alex chats, maybe good to ask the confirmation from the VN ambassador about international vaccination certificate. Are you privy to share that, Mr. Viet An Pham, that question? If I can ask to unmute him. Let's see. And
everybody, we just received some cases of to stem our stem on some cases. But normally, I think it's no need to uphold our stand in this space of the for the confirmation of the validity of this paper.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Van Viet An, and I will give some room in the post reads for you to provide an answer. It's a little bit difficult to follow your audio. I think there's something up with the speaker there. So thank you for sharing, and I will just mute your microphone now, and you can share that in the rest of at the end of the webinar when we share the post reads. Christophe, that was the presentation. Thank you for sharing. I know that you are on a hot seat and you're changing with Elsbeth now. And that means that we're actually ready to go to the second part of this webinar.
Yes, but Guido, before I vacate my seat, let me thank you and for hosting together with me the roundtables, and thank all the participating companies for their contributions. And if there's any need for a continuation of the roundtables and more companies will be interested to join, I'm glad to continue. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you as well, Christophe. My pleasure indeed. Let's see. So about follow-up, that is a good one. We have done this now with Dutch DBAV members, but we'd like to extend and follow through in more sector-related roundtables. For example, manufacturing together. For example, companies that are having business development problems together to share best practices and to dive into the details, or for example, logistics companies together. So let me know, send me an email. I think you all know how to reach me if you want to join in and partake in these discussions, but to be followed up surely. Meanwhile, I'm seeing Elsbeth is here in the panel. Welcome, Elsbeth, Ms. Akkerman. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, I'm gladly here. Thank you very much. Guido, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Ambassador Viet An, very nice to see you. I'm Hue Gom. I hope that you're fine. And well, I look forward to our conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, fantastic. It's good to have you, Elsbeth. About the what we will be doing is basically a brief introduction. So on what the embassy is doing, and then we will move to the poll. And I want to reserve as much time in this hour as possible to also use the Q&A as the way to interact with the audience. But I think the question that everyone has is, what can the embassy do to help businesses that are impacted right now?
Okay, thank you very much, Guido. And I think what we can do and what we're doing together with the DBAV is offering an ear, lending a hand to the Dutch companies who are trying to continue their business here. And well, from the roundtables and also from all the individual contacts we had in the past months, we know that that is not a walk in the park, and that is partly due to something that is beyond our control, namely a pandemic, and partly due to the fight against that pandemic and the way that is done in practice, where you see that currently the Vietnamese government, both national and local government, have a zero tolerance approach, and that makes it sometimes very hard to further your business. So what the embassy does in cases that the continuity of businesses is under serious threat is using our network at the national authorities to forward the concerns that our companies have. And we try to do that in a more comprehensive and collective approach. So we usually speak on behalf of the Netherlands Trade and Industry active in Vietnam, but we have also reached out on behalf of individual companies in the past few weeks who were either hindered in their supply chains, or who were hindered in receiving experts, managers, and that is a different way of having your business continuity under threat. So in everything that we do, we embrace and we share, let's say, the difficulties that the Vietnamese government, the Vietnamese people, but also, let's say, the foreign people who are guests to this country have. But what we want to do is to make sure that the prevention and control measures are insofar tailor-made that they allow the trade and industry to continue their business, because that is in the short term a necessity, but also in the medium and long term a must. If only you look also at Vietnam's reputation worldwide, which is at the moment very good as a trader, as a receiver of foreign direct investment. But well, you know what they say, trust comes on foot and goes on horseback. So that is also something that we really should bear in mind as stakeholders in this collective journey.
Yeah, stakeholders in this collective journey, and I think as such it's also good that we host these roundtables together and that we discuss these matters together with you in a joint event like this. Specifically, we've just listened to the presentation of Christophe, and surely you're well aware of the issues that there are. Are you aware of any specific concerns that, without, of course, addressing the companies, that you can share are, for example, top of your priority list, and how you can be of help?
Well, I think a good example is of one company. Let's say it's in the fruit and veggies sector that is not only a huge receiver of the produce of more than 1,000 farmers, thousands of farmers in the south of Vietnam, but is also the employer of hundreds of employees working in the factory in processing and packaging. And then let's say the distributor of those fruits and veggies to not only supermarkets in Vietnam, but also multiple ones in Europe, the Netherlands, Germany, France. The moment that, let's say, this company is interrupted in its operations, that has a huge impact not only on poor farmers that need to sell, let's say, their produce, but also on eventually the reputation of this company in Vietnam as a solid and trustworthy producer and distributor of goods. So what we did for this particular company is to ensure that they could continue their 3 on-site working processes, despite of the fact that the local government was quite eager to shut down every business in a certain industrial park. So by intervening with the local authorities, the local Chamber of Commerce, but also by reaching out to our contacts at the Ministry of Agriculture and Trade and Industry here in Hanoi, we were able to make a plea and have the company made, and we, let's say, among one of the parties that lobbied, were able to ensure that now the company is still in operation. But
Yeah,
you see,
again,
I mean, it's one company, but it's like an oil spilling, right? Because there's so many people and so many stakeholders involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, yeah, it's good to mention that at this specific example, but there are also other examples where these companies hopefully experience that the embassy is standing shoulder to shoulder with those companies side by side in addressing and defending those companies against sometimes things that are implemented in a wrong manner, as such that the business continuity is jeopardized. So thanks for elaborating on that, and we'll get back to you in a minute, Elsbeth, and we'll do that with the Q&A. My other guest is the chairman of the DBAV. That's Alexander Koch, is managing director at Heineken Vietnam, and also the chairman of DBAV. I'm just adding the spotlight to you, Alex. Yeah, there you are. Fantastic. Good to have you with us. For Heineken, is this, since your entry in Vietnam, the most difficult time for you for the business?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and Xin Chào, Ambassador Viet An. It's an absolute honor for us to have you joining the call today. Well, in my 3 years at Heineken Vietnam, it is certainly the most challenging period we're going through. And actually, I dare to say we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. And yeah, the phase we're going through now is unseen when it comes to complexity and impact. So yeah, if I speak with my Heineken hat and listening to all the challenges that have been highlighted, I recognize all of them. And if I would rank them, I think the most impactful for us would be the 3 on site, which we have now in 3 of our 6 breweries where staff is on site for many, many weeks. And I do want to praise the resilience and the spirit of our colleagues, but I think this accounts for the Vietnamese workforce that remain incredibly resilient. I mean, for us Dutch here in the call, try to imagine asking your Dutch colleagues to stay on site 24/7 for weeks. That will be something very hard to sell in Holland. But this is a not sustainable situation, which is very difficult for us. If we will have to ramp up, we would need to bring more people on site. So that is a concern. Logistics is a concern that's been already flagged out. Interprovincial alignment is still not optimum, and also the intransparency of whether, in our case, beer is labeled as essential or non-essential is impacting our business. But also the incoming travel restrictions will have an impact on investments in Vietnam. In our case, we are expanding our brewery in Vung Tau. That's quite a significant project. We've been incredibly creative to keep the project going with less and less foreign experts overseeing the work and doing everything remotely with walk-around cameras. But there is a cutoff point where what we have reached now, that without these foreign experts being able to come and support us on site, we now have to basically hold some of the investments and the project until those people can come in. So yes, the impact is quite significant.
It's quite severe. Yeah, to start with what you started with, 30 years of Heineken in Vietnam. Congratulations on that. Although surely the celebrations are more modest than you would have desired and you would have thought of when you started as MD more than a year ago. It's also a good moment, I think, to highlight that Heineken has made a very generous donations right from the start of the pandemic, and has shown incredible heart, just like many other Dutch enterprises such as Friesland Campina, Unilever, And I can go on with 15 or 16 companies that have made large donations right from the start of the pandemic, generous while their business is suffering in a historical way. So that is indeed a good summary, I think, for your for what Heineken is going through. And then the DBAV support, can we highlight that? Perhaps the current things that the DBAV is doing to support businesses during this time?
Let me quickly get back on the donation. Thanks for pointing that out. So it was indeed a humbling experience to donate 35 Philips medical equipment to the Hospital of Tropical Diseases last week in Ho Chi Minh City. On the other hand, this is also what we absolutely believe we should do. Vietnam has been very good for our business, so we need to be very good for Vietnam. This is a win-win situation. So this is the least we can do and will continue to do. Then wearing my DBAV hat, yes. So we will continue to build bridges, as is our mission statement. So that is on one hand providing information to our members, and the other pillar would be to actually lobby on behalf of our members and see whether we can offer support. So I think on the information we have many initiatives like this weekly webinar, which I think is increasingly interesting. Last week we had Gabor Fluit from the Heus sharing his knowledge. We have great attendance there. We also have expert talks. The CEO of Pfizer joining us recently, sharing directly to the DBAV members his perspective. We will continue with the newsletter to try and distill the essential news from the many news that people are catching on the various fora. And then, of course, the lobbying is very important. I think we can say that we have an increased and very strong relationship with the Eurocham, with the new board there in place. They also really punch their weight and are very supportive, but also assertive when it comes to writing letters in case of unsustainable measures that I think were announced. For example, if I recall correctly, in Dong Nai, there was an issue that actually blocked people leaving Ho Chi Minh City to go to work in other provinces. They were quick to intervene. So that I think is a very positive thing. We continue, of course, with the support of the entry permit, but you know better than I, Guido, that is temporarily quite a challenge. But we will, the moment that reopens again, we will of course pick that up and support people coming into Vietnam. Also here we work very closely with the Dutch embassy to escalate pressing issues and see whether exceptions can be made. And I think the round table also, kudos to you, Guido, for this great initiative, and Christophe for hosting this, because that's the essence of the DBAV. We really want to hear, and that's also why we have this webinar. We want to hear from our members, how can we best support you? This is a platform, so to say. So it's not the board of the DBAV that will come up with the magic solution, but we really need to and want to hear from you how we can best support you. And then we try as good as we can to be the spider in the web between your concerns, your need for information, and the various contacts that we have in and outside of Vietnam.
Yeah. Great summary, and thanks for indeed pointing all the things out that we are doing, where we are seeking partnerships to further increase our impact, Alex, and I think you summarized it quite well. Indeed, we have a service around entry permits that is momentarily, just like many other businesses, struggling to serve their customers. There's no shortage of demand. It's just that it's difficult to submit the papers. But we are keeping the pressure high for all of our customers, many of whom are a member of the DBAV. And if you are interested in learning more about that and learning more about those procedures, then feel free to contact me, and I will further help you. Okay, great summary, fantastic, and we can speak a lot more. But I'm going to launch the poll, and I'm going to ask of all of you to I've not launched it yet, but to choose a maximum of 3 issues from the roundtables that are most pressing or most severe to your business. And I believe you can choose more than 3, but please stick to this game rule so that we have a good, proper outcome. So here it goes. I'm clicking on the blue launch button, and then I'm just praying for it to work. There we go. It seems like it's possible for you to answer now. In the meantime, Elsbeth, I received a private question. I will handle it anonymously. It says, what can the DBAV or the Dutch embassy do to help the Vietnamese embassy in the Netherlands to find support for vaccine donations by the Dutch government to Vietnam?
Unmute.
Yeah, you're muted still.
Yes, there I am. I think one of the most important things that we should do, and that we jointly did, Alexander and Guido, is that we explained to the Dutch authorities, the Ministry of Health, first and foremost, because that ministry is in the lead when it comes to both the international, the national vaccination plan, and also the international donations that we do via the COVAX facility. About that, we inform them about the situation in Vietnam, and I think we made that case, and they are aware of the fact that at the moment the situation in Vietnam is rather dire, in a sense that the country is confronted with a huge need for vaccines and a global shortage of those vaccines. We have done our outreach, and it is then up to the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to see what they can free. And unfortunately, the Netherlands is not in a position like other European countries to donate vaccines, simply because we don't have leftover vaccines that we can easily distribute. But for sure, to Vietnam, the Netherlands government looks to the rest of the world and will allocate support where it is most needed.
Yeah, thanks for that. And Elsbeth, just to reassure all of us, will you keep the pressure high in the coming time and see if there are possibilities after all, or is this effort done and dusted?
Well, I think we will continue to dialogue, and we will continue to share about the situation in Vietnam. But I really do want to underline that there's absolutely no pressure needed to get the message across, because our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also our Parliament, our Ministry of Health, everybody is very well aware of the fact that the situation worldwide is dire. And I mean, we have experienced the same situation not that long ago, because in January and in February of this year, also in the Netherlands, the vaccination program was not full on. By now, we are moving towards what we call herd immunity, because of the high number of vaccinations that we were able to set. But let's say that experience makes us as a country, I think, a very good listener. The issue is that we are a very strong promoter and advocate of fair and equitable sharing. And then Vietnam is one of those countries. And if I can also assure you that if it's not vaccines via COVAX, we will look for other forms of support. And for sure, we will team up with Ambassador Viet Anh and his excellent team in the Netherlands for getting their message across.
Yeah, true. And of course, together we have with the embassy, we have made a very conscious effort, an intensive effort to get vaccine donation done from the Netherlands. And until now, with no result. That doesn't mean that there will be no result in the future, or that there will be no result on other domains, but vaccines. So we'll have to see about that. And yeah, thanks for that answer so far. And yeah, and together with the Vietnamese embassy in The Hague, the DBAV also has a conversation going. So these are the, let's say, that is in terms of vaccine donation. I'm clicking end poll, and I'm hoping that everyone can then share share results. There we go. This is the result of the poll, where we see as point number 1, the most recognized is the lack of predictability in the rule setting and the pandemic communication. I think on the second place, only 32 answers, is difficulties with expat immigration. And then thirdly is overall lack of perspective. And from there is actually quite close with, at the last place, partner and family unhappiness mentioned. Alex, what does this outcome tell you?
Well, it's a little bit what we discussed. So I think if you want to manage a business, then it is a balance between long-term and short-term. And I think a crisis like this forces everybody to really manage on the day-to-day basis. But this cannot persist too long. So if we want to anticipate a gradual reopening of the businesses, that means that factories will need to reopen, need to scale up production before you can sell. There need to be a certain harmony between the various provinces, districts, wards, etc. So if there is no clarity, no line of sight, it is very difficult to anticipate and very risky to anticipate, whereas businesses are already losing a lot of money, obvious, due to this situation. So yeah, I think this is beyond the Dutch community. I think in general, for the business community, both Vietnamese and international, the key issue, and also for the Vietnamese public, I think, to have a little bit clarity of what is the plan. And I think it's important and promising that the narrative has changed recently from a zero COVID storyline to living with COVID, and we hear some plans emerging. What is the vaccination plan of Ho Chi Minh City, and when can we expect reopenings? But yeah, it would be welcomed if this can be further improved so that businesses can anticipate the next step and put the horizon a little bit further than managing from today to tomorrow.
Thanks, Alex. That's the business perspective. And Elsbeth, do you double these statements?
Yeah, I absolutely. And obviously, everybody's now looking to will next week bring us some improvement. We will be able to go out, visit friends, be able to go to the supermarket without, let's say, a dedicated time slot. But in the end, obviously, it is very important that we are all able and willing to look to mid and long-term perspectives. And that requires some predictability. And the interesting thing that I found in my 3 years here is that whereas the Vietnamese are typically characterized as being very resilient. The Dutch are very often characterized as being very flexible, and I think both are true. And we also share a very strong entrepreneurial spirit, but that spirit needs some inspiration. And I really think that Alexander also referred to the fact that Prime Minister Chin has referred to living with the pandemic several times in the past week, whereas 2 weeks ago it was still the zero tolerance policy. I think that already offers us a perspective of ongoing changes in the mentality of the National COVID Steering Committee, but also changes in the practical approach towards fighting the pandemic. So I really think that that change also offers us the room as government representatives, but also as the business community, the Dutch business community, the European business community, but also other international partners here to engage with both the national and the local authorities to have a short-term oriented dialogue about more tailor-made measures, also with an eye on the mid and long term, that in the end also has everything to do with mutual trust between trading and investment partners, and also Vietnam's current still very, very strong reputation, and the fact that I think it's in everybody's interest to make sure that we are able to maintain that good reputation.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think what you're referring to is indeed the flexibility of the people in Vietnam, the Vietnamese, the Dutch, but also the other nationalities that are joining us in this webinar today. I've stopped sharing the poll results just now, but I think it also says something about the resilience of the people. The partner and family unhappiness is somehow at the bottom of the list of priorities, which is of course still something that we are experiencing, but we are putting, let's say, the general stake first before we start thinking about our own situation. And I think it's fair to say that we are still in a very fortunate situation, in a situation where we can live relatively easily with the pandemic. So that is a silver lining. You are sketching some hopeful signals. What we are seeing is that the number 2 is indeed the lack of perspective. But the questions in the chat are of a practical nature, and not so much about the general perspective. So I would like to use, if that's okay with all of us, I would like to extend this webinar for about 5 minutes so we can go over these questions together before we round up. A question from Koch. He's a DBAV member in the North. He says, in the diversity of local applications, expats may not be allowed on vaccination lists of some local wards, whereas others enabled that according to national guidelines. And there is, let me see, lack of clarity for arrivals from the Netherlands who hold quarantine 1 week with vaccination proof, but wards may not enable that. So what Koch is referring to is the different interpretation in quarantine times and vaccination and vaccine proof documents. What are examples, if any, he asks, of intervention, e.g. from the embassy on these issues? He asks.
Well, I think answering that question is up to me. Thank you very much, Koos, for posing that question, and I'm sorry to hear about this, although I know that it happens. So the national rules are now for fully vaccinated people who have, let's say, a certificate or an international approved vaccination certificate. It should be 7+7. We also know that the national authorities authorized provincial and local authorities that, depending on the situation, they can implement more stringent measures. So eventually the ward has some autonomy when it comes to setting the rules in their territory. However, if that happens, and it would be really a problem also for the continuity of the business, I would say send the embassy when you're, let's say, in the location, in the environment, or in the vicinity, I should say, of Hanoi, or the Consulate General when you are closer to Ho Chi Minh City. Just drop us a line, and if there is a good case, we will reach out on behalf of you and then see what we can do with arguments and some rationale.
Yeah. Thanks for elaborating on that. And indeed, the point is to make us aware of the problem you are the problems you are experiencing. We are going to the last question of the webinar. It's coming from Siebe van Wijk. Siebe is managing director at the Fruit Republic. He says, when the 3 in place policy ends, what protocols can we as Dutch companies put in place to prevent that companies are closed by the provincial authorities when in a weekly COVID testing an employee tests positive? Now, this is a very detailed question, and it has to do with the standard operating procedures, and again with the lookout, sort of a roadmap that for most entrepreneurs or most executives in management teams is still very difficult to grasp. Alex, maybe from your perspective, what do you see and how do you prepare for such challenges?
Well, I'm not going to burn my fingers and trying to answer this question, because I think this has to do with indeed the lack of transparency on what's up and what's next. But yeah, we can expect when the 3 on site will go away that a ruthless implementation of 5K and other measures will be in place. So I think all companies, because that's where we basically came from before we entered in this hard lockdown. And that's probably then the next step to de-escalate to. So be prepared for that, I would say. But yeah, I'm not sure what will be the new policies. But yeah, make sure to really think to de-escalate how it actually got escalated in the first place.
I think the strong point of Siebe's question is that he's really looking ahead. So he's not looking at the current situation, but also thinking about the near future. And perhaps as a joint effort, this could be also something for the DBAV and embassy to do. Not only point out what are the current problems, but it's because it's probably too late to resolve them. But it's also to point out what will be the problems in the upcoming time, in the near future. And Elsbeth, in your discussions with the authorities, are you able to raise such concerns or future concerns, perhaps some best practices with the Vietnamese authorities?
Yeah, I think look, the Vietnamese authorities are professionals, and the Vietnamese authorities are not our enemy. They like us. They want to make sure that the circumstances are safe and solid enough to have the business community flourish, because that is in everybody's interest. So I would really. I know for a fact that Siebe has a number of very important lessons to take on board for future situations, hopefully not as drastic and dramatic as the current pandemic. But yeah, I would really like to take them on board, but I would also like to underline that if we have sound arguments, people might not immediately or instantly be open for them. But we have also found that when you are a serious partner and you have serious arguments and you can make a solid case, people are willing to engage. I think that is the best recipe that we have for now. Let's continue to engage, be frank and fair and straightforward about how we experience the current situation. Try to keep an open mind for everybody's position. Your position as a business community is probably very different than your position as a provincial leader. You have different stakes, at least for the short term. But we will have to find middle ground. And I think that from the roundtables, from this seminar, you may find an ear and a shoulder if you need to at both the DBAV, but also at the Dutch embassy. And Guido, you said it earlier, we are we shoulder the Dutch community where we can. And I really hope that you feel that way, and you feel that also the Office of the Netherlands Embassy and the CG in Ho Chi Minh City is open enough for you. At least we try.
Yeah, no, we're very aware of that.
You know, if I can just build on the anticipation that Siebe brings to the discussion, which is really good, and beyond, let's say, the rules and regulations in dealing with COVID. We all know, of course, we will be doing business in quite a significantly changed business environment. On a global scale, commodity prices will soar, container prices from east to west and vice versa have sometimes increased tenfold. But also if you look at the consumer market in Vietnam, we should already now anticipate quite a changed consumer behavior once this is all over. So anticipation is indeed a very important topic whilst managing the day-to-day business. Anticipate a quite changed tomorrow, even when COVID is over. And maybe to end a bit on a positive note, I strongly believe on the long term, Vietnam remains a very promising and potential market. So if we look back to this in a few years, it will be a bump in an otherwise increasing line. But being in the bump now, that is of course tough, and we need to make the best of it. But the outlook for Vietnam, I personally believe, remains incredibly promising.
Exactly.
I would like to second that. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. The outlook on the long term, mid-long term remains positive for most businesses. Your vision is appreciated by the chat, Alex. And Siebe, I've asked to unmute you, and perhaps would you be able to, for example, think with us on how we can share best practices, for example, with the local or provinces. You are asking, can we as DBAV come with a policy regulation, provide example protocols? But we would need input from, for example, your side. How would you feel about that?
I'm especially, I guess, both in Heineken and the Heus, everybody deals with the same situation. In 15 September, the stream play stops, but then what? Still, even if all our people will soon have the second vaccination in the back house, but then still you will test positive. And in our discussion with the provincial authorities, they actually don't know what they're going to do. So we are trying to formulate, well, these are the regulations that we as a company want to do, and we try to get together with the VCCI in Kanto, we try to challenge the province. Okay, which policies, what can work and what cannot work. I mean, the current way, if they close your they can close your company, and that's one problem. But if you can open after 1 week, it's okay, and if it's clear what you can do. But if they close your company and it's closed for 2 months, like a lot of companies happened, then there is no perspective. So I think I guess in Heineken, in the Heus, everybody has warehouses will develop some protocols, and you don't want a situation where one positive case, then and there are 1,000 people in the pack house, and there's one positive case, and you close your pack house. So how are the other companies dealing with this? What protocol do they put in place? And I guess with every province they have a bit deviation in how they deal with it. But unluckily, in Kanto seem to be the most strictest. So the clock is ticking for after 15 September.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Siebe. I just wanted to invite you indeed briefly to share that, and it's a good perspective. And to end with the slightly positive perspectives are always the things that we can influence, the things that we can do. Hopefully we can see this as a dent. So we're moving down now, and hopefully we move back up. And although the moving back up will not go as fast as in the first 3 waves, we still see good perspectives on the midterm and on the long term. If we look at the round tables, for example, the things that we have done with the DBAV, we could continue those by, for example, anticipating on the near future of business in Vietnam. Like Alex raised, consumer behavior in Vietnam, how will it change? And perhaps that the FMCG companies, if not too competitive, can share best practices or ideas with each other on those trends. But also on the situation in Vietnam, we could have groups that form policy regulation advice and that come up with SOPs regarding that. Or, for example, had the things that Siebe, apparently you are already doing with the Kanto People Committee, try to trigger them with ideas on how, let's say, people safety and business continuity can be balanced and preserved, thereby never losing sight of the people's safety and putting that in the first place. I think we all agree to that. but also keeping room for business continuity and predictability in the rule setting. So these are some things that I am personally taking out of this event, where we sit together, have questions, discuss those. So for me, it was very useful to have you. Thank you. We are a bit over time, but I see that we have kept a lot of people in the call still engaged. So thank you for your time. I would like to start by thanking the ambassador of Vietnam in The Hague. We've met last week. It was truly my pleasure. Good to have you with us. Then I would like to thank Ambassador Elsbeth Akkerman. Thank you for your time and your comments and your support for Dutch businesses in Vietnam.
Gladly done, and happy to engage anytime you deem opportune.
Yeah.
And thank you, and Christoph also for reaching out to the business community during the roundtables.
Absolutely, of course. My thanks to Christoph. Last but definitely not least, Alex, thanks for your support during this time. You're a busy man with Heineken, but still putting lots of time in DBAV and members' concerns, also joining the Eurojam. So not only thanks for your participation today, but thanks for what you are doing for the business community.
No, happy to do so. And thank you, Guido, for this excellent webinar, or this information flow during these difficult times, and also Elsbeth and Christoph for the great cooperation. And together we will make the best of a challenging situation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so let's see how it develops. It's not an ending point. We continue to provide you with the information you need. Active engagement from our members is what the DBAV needs, and we're happy to receive that in an increasing, we see that coming to us increasingly more and more. Once again, thank you very much. Enjoy your Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Nhưng mà